A warning to our viewers. What you're about to watch is a true story. The following program contains content that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Daddy, no! Those were the last words 4-year-old Bella Watts spoke before her father took her life. Minutes earlier, she had watched him do the same to her little sister. But the horror began hours before, in the darkness of an early August morning, when Chris Watts strangled his pregnant wife Shanann as she lay in their bed. On the morning of August 13, 2018, in the quiet suburban town of Frederick, Colorado, a seemingly perfect family would cease to exist. Before the sun rose that day, 34-year-old Shanann Watts, 15 weeks pregnant with her unborn son, would take her final breath in her own bedroom. Her daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, would wake to find their mother gone, not knowing they would soon share her fate. The man responsible wasn't an intruder. He wasn't a stranger. He was the man who had vowed to protect them, their father, their protector, their killer. This is the story of how a picture-perfect family man transformed into someone capable of the unthinkable. A story of betrayal so profound it would shock a nation. A story that reminds us that sometimes the greatest dangers lie not in the shadows of strangers, but in the smile of someone we trust. Welcome to the Shadow Files crime series. Tonight's case will shake you to your core. Take a moment to hit subscribe, drop a like, and please let us know where you're watching from. And now, we begin. August 2018. As summer's warmth lingered over Frederick, Colorado, social media told stories of family vacations, back-to-school shopping, and precious last moments of freedom before autumn's routine would begin. Among these digital snapshots of American life, one family's photos stood out, not for being different, but for being so perfectly familiar. The Watts family seemed to embody the modern American dream. Their 5-bedroom home at 2825 Saratoga Trail sat in a quiet suburban development where children played freely in the streets. Chris and Shanann Watts shared glimpses of their lives, like proud parents do: first days of school, birthday parties, family vacations. Their daughters, Bella and Celeste, beamed in every photo, their eyes bright with childhood's innocent joy. And now, with their third child on the way, their happiness appeared complete. Through Shanann's frequent Facebook Live videos, thousands followed their journey. She documented their lives with the enthusiasm of someone living their dream: a loving husband, beautiful children, a successful career, and another baby on the way. They were the family others aspired to be. But beneath this carefully curated feed of smiling faces and perfect moments, a lethal darkness was growing. One that would transform their home from a symbol of suburban success into a crime scene that would shock the conscience of a nation, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous monsters aren't hiding in the shadows, they're hiding in plain sight, behind the mask of the perfect family man. To understand the magnitude of what was lost on that August morning, we must first understand Shanann Watts. Born on January 10, 1984 in the small town of Aberdeen, North Carolina, Shanann Catherine Rzucek learned early in life what it meant to be a fighter. As a child, she battled serious health issues, including a years-long struggle with lupus. But those who knew her say it was these early challenges that forged her remarkable spirit. She didn't just survive, she thrived, transforming her struggles into strength, her setbacks into determination. By her early 30s, Shanann had built a successful career in direct sales with Weld, marketing their Thrive product line. Her social media presence became a testament to her entrepreneurial spirit. But more than that, it revealed something fundamental about who Shanann was. A woman determined to create the life she dreamed of, not just for herself, but for her family. And family was everything to Shanann. Her relationship with her parents, Frank and Sandra Rzucek, and her brother, Frankie Jr., remained close despite the distance between Colorado and North Carolina. She spoke to them almost daily, sharing every precious moment with her daughters. In the summer of 2018, At 34 years old, Shanann was 15 weeks pregnant with her third child, a boy she and Chris had decided to name Nico. Her social media posts from this time radiate with joy and anticipation. She called her unborn son her little miracle, but at the heart of Shanann's world were her daughters, 4-year-old Bella Marie and 3-year-old Celeste Catherine, known affectionately as CeCe. Bella, the sensitive soul, was already showing signs of her mother's gentle strength. Her teachers would later describe her as extraordinarily empathetic for her age, always the first to comfort a crying classmate. CeCe, nicknamed Rambo for her fearless nature, was pure energy and motion. While Bella took after her mother's thoughtful nature, CeCe was a force of joy, turning every moment into an adventure. Despite their different personalities, both girls shared one striking similarity: their absolute adoration of their father. That father, Christopher Lee Watts, was born just a year after Shanann, in Spring Lake, North Carolina. Those who knew him in his early years describe a quiet, almost passive young man, someone who avoided confrontation at all costs. It was this very quality that would later lead investigators to question how such a seemingly non-confrontational person could commit such violent acts. Chris and Shanann's paths crossed in 2010 through a Facebook connection that quickly turned to love. After their wedding in 2012, they moved to Colorado, where Chris secured a position as an operator for Anadarko Petroleum. To the outside world, they appeared to be living the American dream, though financial struggles would lead them to declare bankruptcy in 2015. But it was in 2017 that Chris began to change. A physical transformation through intense diet and exercise reshaped not just his body, but, as investigators would later discover, his entire perspective on life. While he maintained the facade of a devoted family man, he was secretly cultivating a relationship with a coworker, a relationship that would ultimately become the catalyst for unthinkable horror. As we go into the most chilling details of this documentary, take a brief moment to like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, for more in-depth investigations and analysis of significant cases like this. The early hours of August 13, 2018 began routinely enough. At 1:48 a.m., Shanann Watts returned home from a business trip to Arizona. Her friend and colleague Nickole Atkinson dropped her off, watching as Shanann walked up to her front door carrying her suitcase. It would be the last time anyone outside the Watts family would see her alive. At 2 a.m., Shanann sent her final text message. By morning, her phone would fall silent. Silence that would set off alarm bells for those who knew her. Shanann was never out of touch, especially not when it came to her children. But while Shanann's phone had gone quiet, the Watts household had not. At 5:15 a.m., a neighbor's security camera captured Chris Watts backing his truck up to the garage, an unusual action that would later take on sinister significance. As morning turned to afternoon, Shanann missed a doctor's appointment, something completely out of character for a woman who meticulously documented every aspect of her pregnancy. Her friend, Nickole Atkinson, who had dropped her off just hours earlier, began to worry. Multiple texts went unanswered, calls went straight to voicemail. By 12:10 p.m., Nickole's concern had turned to alarm. She went to the Watts home and, finding no response, contacted the police. But the seeds of this tragedy had been planted long before that August morning. In the weeks leading up to that day, those closest to Shanann had noticed subtle changes in Chris. The man who once featured prominently in his wife's social media posts had become increasingly distant. What they didn't know was that Chris had begun an affair with a coworker, Nichol Kessinger, a relationship he had hidden behind the facade of his perfect family life. When Shanann joyfully announced her pregnancy with their son Nico, Chris's reaction was noticeably subdued. Financial pressures were mounting. The couple had previously filed for bankruptcy in 2015, and their marriage was showing signs of strain. Shanann had begun discussing marriage counseling, desperately trying to understand what had changed in their relationship. But on that August morning, as Chris Watts backed his truck into his garage under the cover of darkness, all attempts at saving their marriage would come to a brutal end. In the hours that followed, the picture-perfect family man would commit acts so horrific they would shake even seasoned investigators to their core. What happened in the early hours of August 13th would later be revealed through Chris Watts' own confession, though his story would change multiple times before the full truth emerged. According to his final confession, after Shanann returned home from her business trip, she and Chris had a conversation about their marriage. He told her he wanted to separate. The discussion quickly escalated. In those dark hours before dawn, Chris Watts made a decision that would forever destroy 5 lives: his pregnant wife's, his daughter's, his unborn son's, and his own. In the master bedroom of their suburban home, Chris strangled Shanann. The violence of the act would later be detailed in medical reports, but perhaps most haunting was what happened next. 4-year-old Bella walked in, asking what was wrong with her mother. Chris wrapped Shanann's body in a bedsheet. As he attempted to carry her downstairs, he lost his grip. The sound of her body hitting each step would later be described in his prison confession, details that kept him awake at night. The neighbor's security camera captured what happened next, Chris backing his truck into the garage. What it didn't show was what that truck contained. In the back seat, his daughters were still alive, sitting with their mother's body at their feet. They would remain alive for the entire 45-minute drive to the oil field where Chris worked. What happened at that oil field would shake even the most hardened investigators. One by one, Chris smothered his daughters. Bella, the last to die, fought back. Her final words, "Daddy, no," would echo through courtrooms and haunt all who heard them. Chris returned home and began staging the scene. He made the bed, he threw away the sheets. He placed Shanann's wedding ring on the nightstand, a detail meant to suggest she had left him. But as morning broke over Frederick, Colorado, he had already set in motion the events that would lead to his capture. The investigation into the disappearance of the Watts family began at 1:40 p.m. on August 13th. When Officer Scott Coonrod arrived at the family home, what appeared to be a routine welfare check would soon evolve into one of Colorado's most devastating criminal investigations. Nickole Atkinson, who had dropped Shanann off just hours earlier, knew something was terribly wrong. Her friend had missed an important doctor's appointment, something the meticulous Shanann would never do. The mounting silence from someone who regularly documented every moment of her day was deafening. As local news crews descended on the scene, Chris Watts stepped into the spotlight. His performance would later be scrutinized by investigators for its glaring inconsistencies. Standing in front of the cameras, he pleaded for his family's return with dry eyes and steady speech, behavior that veteran detectives would later flag as suspicious. Within 24 hours, the FBI and Colorado Bureau of Investigation joined the case. The search was intensifying, but investigators were already seeing cracks in Chris's story. His calm demeanor in the face of his family's disappearance struck law enforcement as oddly detached. The evidence began painting a damning picture. Shanann's phone, purse, and vital medication remained in the house. Her car sat untouched in the garage. Child seats still installed, but it was the neighbor's security camera that would provide the first crucial break. In what would become one of the case's most telling moments, police body cameras captured Chris watching himself on his neighbor's security footage, loading his truck in the pre-dawn hours. As the neighbor pointed out the suspicious timing, officers observed Chris's growing agitation, his nervous swaying, his hands repeatedly moving to his head, his inability to stand still. Cell phone records revealed the digital breadcrumbs of a family's destruction. While Chris claimed complete ignorance of his family's whereabouts, GPS data told a different story, leading investigators straight to an Anadarko Petroleum site where he had worked that morning. But it was the polygraph test that finally cracked the case. After failing it spectacularly, Chris requested to speak with his father. In that recorded conversation, the first version of his confession emerged, though even then he attempted to deflect blame, claiming Shanann had harmed their daughters. The physical evidence demolished his lies. A bedsheet matching the Watts home was discovered at a nearby dump site. GPS tracking from his work truck mapped out his movements that morning with damning precision. Text messages revealed mounting tensions in the marriage. Then came the revelation that shattered any remaining illusion of the perfect family man. Nichol Kessinger, a co-worker, came forward to reveal her affair with Chris, a relationship that had begun just weeks before the murders. Her testimony would provide crucial insight into Chris's state of mind in the days leading up to the crime. The final, heartbreaking pieces fell into place at the oil site. Guided by Chris's confession, investigators made their devastating discovery. Shanann's body lay in a shallow grave. The bodies of Bella and Celeste were found in separate oil tanks. Tanks so small that investigators would later reveal Chris had to force his daughter's bodies through openings just 8 inches wide. Each piece of evidence, each digital trace, each witness statement formed links in an unbreakable chain, one that would lead Chris Watts not just to a confession, but to a reckoning with justice that would ensure he would never walk free again. On August 21, 2018, Chris Watts stood before a judge in Weld County Courthouse. The charges were devastating in their scope. 5 counts of first-degree murder, including 2 additional counts for his daughters being under the age of 12, 1 count of unlawful termination of pregnancy, 3 counts of tampering with deceased human bodies. As prosecutors built their case, they consulted with Shanann's family about seeking the death penalty in a remarkable demonstration of grace amidst unimaginable grief. The Rzucek family made their position clear. They would not seek the death of another human being. On November 6th, Chris Watts stood before the court again. This time, he pleaded guilty to all 9 charges. The plea deal, influenced by the Rzucek family's wishes, would spare him from the death penalty, but ensure he would never walk free again. The sentencing hearing on November 19th would provide some of the case's most powerful moments. Frank Rzucek, Shanann's father, approached the podium, his voice thick with emotion. "I trusted you to take care of them, not kill them," he told his former son-in-law. "And they also trusted you. You disgust me. They were loving and caring people, and they were trusting, and you took them away from us." Shanann's mother, Sandra, spoke of mercy, not for Chris, but as a reflection of her daughter's spirit. "I didn't want death for you," she said, "because that's not my right. Your life is between you and God now." Judge Marcelo Kopkow's sentence was unprecedented in its severity, 5 life sentences, 3 to be served consecutively, 2 concurrently, without the possibility of parole. An additional 48 years for the unlawful termination of Shanann's pregnancy, 36 more years for tampering with the bodies. In December 2018, citing security concerns, authorities transferred Chris Watts to Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. There, in a maximum security cell, he would begin serving his multiple life sentences, condemned to spend the rest of his days contemplating the lives he destroyed and the family he annihilated. Behind those prison walls, Chris Watts would later reveal more details about that August morning, confessions that would only deepen the horror of his crimes. But for the families left behind, no explanation could ever be enough to make sense of such senseless destruction. The Watts family murders captured the nation's attention in a way few cases have. Multiple documentaries, including Netflix's American Murder: The Family Next Door, would attempt to make sense of the senseless. But for those closest to the tragedy, these productions brought both healing and hurt. The case sparked crucial conversations about domestic violence, particularly the often invisible escalation that precedes such tragedies. Warning signs that seemed clear only in hindsight became powerful teaching moments for domestic violence awareness organizations. The Rzucek family channeled their grief into advocacy, working to help other families recognize the warning signs they wished they had seen. Their strength in the face of unimaginable loss became a beacon of hope for other families touched by domestic violence. From behind prison walls, Chris Watts would continue to reveal disturbing details through prison correspondence. In letters to pen pals, he would admit to planning the murders for weeks, attempting to end Shanann's pregnancy through secretly administered OxyContin, and failing in initial attempts to smother his daughters at home. In Frederick, Colorado, the community would never be the same. The house at 2825 Saratoga Trail became a somber reminder of the tragedy, with mourners leaving flowers, stuffed animals, and notes of remembrance. The neighborhood that once represented suburban tranquility became forever associated with one of Colorado's darkest chapters. But perhaps the most powerful legacy lives on through Shanann's own words and images, the thousands of photos and videos she shared, documenting her love for her daughters and her hope for their future. These digital footprints, once meant to share family joy, became precious memories of lives cut tragically short. Shanann Watts was more than a victim. She was a mother who fought to create the best life possible for her children. Bella and Celeste were more than statistics. They were bright lights of possibility, extinguished far too soon. And Nico, though never born, represented the hope of new beginnings. Their story reminds us that behind every headline, every documentary, every true crime story are real lives, precious, irreplaceable, and worthy of remembrance. For Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico, justice was served. But the true measure of their impact lies not in the punishment of their killer, but in the lives they touched, the awareness they raised, and the changes their story continues to inspire. If you enjoyed this content, join our community by subscribing and turning on notifications. Every subscriber makes it possible for us to keep creating content we're passionate about sharing with you.